Judge Harrison steps forward, his shoe deliberately crushing her case notes on the marble floor. His breath hot against her ear, he whispers, "Next time, send someone worthy of my courtroom." Dr. Collins straightens her spine, looks directly into his eyes, and whispers 3 words. The judge staggers backward. His face drains of color. His hand trembles against the bench. What 3 words could make a powerful judge look like he'd seen a ghost? Dr. Amara Collins arrives at the Baltimore County Courthouse 40 minutes early. Sunlight gleams off her Harvard Medical School pin, a small reminder of 20 years of excellence in neurology. She adjusts her tailored blazer and reviews her expert testimony notes one final time. The plaintiff's attorney, Sandra Weiss, greets her with a grateful handshake. "Dr. Collins, thank you for coming. Your expertise will be crucial in proving the hospital's negligence." Dr. Collins smiles. The MRI results speak for themselves. The patient deserved better care. They enter courtroom 4C, where the plaintiff sits nervously at the front table. Dr. Collins offers a reassuring nod before taking her designated seat. The defense team arrives in a cluster of expensive suits and confident smirks. Their expert witness, a silver-haired man, receives immediate deference from the courtroom staff. At precisely 9 a.m., the bailiff's voice cuts through the murmurs. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Terrence Harrison." Judge Harrison strides in, his black robe flowing behind him like a shadow. At 63, his reputation precedes him, fair but uncompromising, respected but feared. He scans the courtroom with practiced authority until his gaze lands on Dr. Collins. Something shifts in his expression, subtle but unmistakable. During introductions, he studies her credentials with visible skepticism. Harvard Medical School, board certification in neurology, research publications. He looks up, eyes narrowing. "But how much actual clinical experience do you have, doctor?" 20 years of clinical practice, Your Honor, with over 3,000 cases similar to the one before the court today. He grunts, clearly unimpressed. When the defense introduces their expert, Dr. James Phillips, the judge's demeanor transforms. He smiles, mentioning he's familiar with Phillips's outstanding reputation. Throughout pretrial motions, the pattern continues. Judge Harrison interrupts Weiss repeatedly, particularly when discussing Dr. Collins's upcoming testimony. Yet he gives the defense team uninterrupted time to speak, nodding along with their arguments. The defense attorney, Thomas Bedford, exchanges knowing glances with the judge. Dr. Collins observes everything, her pen moving steadily across her legal pad. She notes each interruption, each dismissive gesture directed her way. Weiss leans over during a brief recess. "I'm sorry about this. Harrison has a reputation for being old school." "I've noticed," Dr. Collins replies calmly. "But don't worry. I've dealt with this type of behavior throughout my career." What neither the judge nor anyone else realizes is that Dr. Collins has developed more than patience during those years of facing bias. A familiar name on the court docket connects to Dr. Collins's past in ways that will soon shatter Judge Harrison's world. The trial begins with brisk opening statements. Dr. Collins sits with perfect posture at the witness table, her expression neutral despite the tension crackling through the courtroom. When Weiss calls her to the stand, Judge Harrison's mouth tightens into a thin line. "Dr. Collins, please state your qualifications for the record," Weiss begins. Before Dr. Collins can answer, Judge Harrison interjects, "We've already established the witness's background during pretrial. Let's not waste the court's time with repetition." Dr. Collins maintains her composure as she's sworn in. The oath feels heavier than usual under Harrison's cold stare. Weiss guides her through her initial testimony about the patient's condition and the hospital's critical errors. Dr. Collins speaks clearly, her expertise evident in every precisely chosen term. The MRI clearly showed early signs of pressure on the spinal cord that required immediate surgical intervention, she explains. The 12-hour delay violated basic standard of care protocols. Judge Harrison shifts in his seat. Dr. Collins, please remember this is a courtroom, not a lecture hall. Keep your answers concise. The defense attorney rises for cross-examination, his approach immediately aggressive. Dr. Collins, isn't it possible that reasonable medical professionals might interpret these MRI results differently? No, she responds firmly. The imaging shows unmistakable compression at the C4 to C5 level. Any qualified neurologist would— Objection, Your Honor, Bedford interrupts. The witness is speculating about other doctors' opinions. Sustained. Judge Harrison rules instantly. Dr. Collins, stick to what you personally know, not what you believe other doctors might think. When Dr. Collins attempts to explain the universal standards for interpreting such imaging, Judge Harrison interrupts again. The jury doesn't need a medical school lecture, Doctor. Answer the specific questions asked. Dr. Collins adjusts her approach, becoming more concise without sacrificing substance. When she presents peer-reviewed research supporting her position, Judge Harrison sighs audibly. Is this academic paper directly relevant to this specific case, Doctor? He asks with thinly veiled contempt. Yes, Your Honor. This research established the current standard of care that— Move on, he cuts her off. The jury needs practical information, not theoretical research. As the questioning continues, Dr. Collins maintains her professionalism despite the judge's increasing hostility. During a particularly technical explanation, Judge Harrison checks his watch ostentatiously. Perhaps we should break for lunch before Dr. Collins continues with her extensive explanations. The courtroom responds with uncomfortable laughter. Weiss objects to the judge's tone, but is quickly shut down with threats of contempt. During the recess, Dr. Collins steps into the hallway for a breath of air. She overhears Judge Harrison speaking with Bedford around the corner. These academics think they know everything, Harrison says, especially the ones with something to prove. Dr. Collins retreats silently, retrieving her phone from her bag. She steps into an empty conference room, closes the door, and dials a number from memory. When the call connects, her voice shifts into something more authoritative. This is Collins. I need information on Judge Terrence Harrison's judicial record, particularly cases involving female expert witnesses. She listens briefly before adding, also check the ownership records of Bedford Holdings from 2018 to present. I believe our judge has connections he hasn't disclosed. The voice on the other end asks for authorization, and Dr. Collins responds with a code that sets machinery in motion. The afternoon session intensifies like storm clouds gathering. Dr. Collins returns to the stand, her demeanor still professional despite the morning's treatment. The plaintiff's attorney attempts to redirect, guiding her back to the critical findings that demonstrate the hospital's negligence. Dr. Collins, could you explain how the delay in treatment directly impacted the patient's prognosis? She nods, organizing her thoughts. The 12-hour delay allowed the spinal compression to worsen, resulting in permanent nerve damage that— Objection, Bedford interrupts. Speculative. Judge Harrison doesn't hesitate. Sustained. Weiss frowns. Your Honor, Dr. Collins is establishing causation based on medical evidence. She's offering conclusions beyond what the evidence supports, Judge Harrison counters. Continue, counselor, but with more restraint. Dr. Collins attempts to present the established medical timeline, but Bedford objects at every critical point. Judge Harrison sustains nearly every objection, effectively gutting her testimony. When she tries to reference the patient's deteriorating neurological exams, the judge cuts her off mid-sentence. Dr. Collins, are you trying to instruct this court on legal matters now? Stick to what you supposedly know. The word supposedly hangs in the air like a slap. Weiss objects immediately. Your Honor, that comment impugns the witness's credentials. Overruled. Counsel, control your witness. Dr. Collins takes a slow breath. If I may clarify the medical progression documented in the records— The court doesn't need clarification, Judge Harrison interrupts. The jury understands the timeline. When Dr. Collins attempts to cite 3 recent medical journal publications supporting her position on standard of care violations, Judge Harrison waves his hand dismissively. The jury will disregard the doctor's reference to unverified research. Bedford seizes this opportunity, questioning Dr. Collins's publishing record with inappropriate vigor. Isn't it true that your most recent publication was rejected by the Journal of Neurosurgery before being accepted by a less prestigious publication? Objection. Weiss stands. This line of questioning is irrelevant and designed to harass the witness. I'll allow it, Judge Harrison says, leaning forward with interest. The witness's professional standing is relevant to her credibility. For 20 excruciating minutes, Dr. Collins defends her legitimate credentials, while Judge Harrison allows the defense to twist her accomplishments into supposed shortcomings. The jurors shift uncomfortably, some avoiding eye contact with her out of secondhand embarrassment. The breaking point comes when Dr. Collins requests permission to demonstrate a neurological principle using a medical model she brought. This visual aid will help illustrate exactly where the compression occurred and why immediate intervention was. Judge Harrison stands abruptly, looming over her. This theatrical display is unnecessary and wastes the court's time. Perhaps in your university classroom you can indulge in such performances, but this is a court of law. He signals to the bailiff. Remove that prop from the witness stand. The bailiff approaches and takes the anatomical model from Dr. Collins's hands. The deliberate public humiliation silences the courtroom. Several jurors look down, uncomfortable with the display of power. Dr. Collins stands perfectly still, her dignity intact despite the judge's efforts. Your Honor, she says calmly, may I approach the bench? Judge Harrison hesitates, then reluctantly nods. When she reaches the bench, she speaks just loud enough for him and the attorneys to hear. Your repeated interruptions and dismissive comments toward me appear to follow a pattern evident in your previous cases with female expert witnesses. This pattern could be interpreted as gender bias. Judge Harrison's face darkens with anger. Are you threatening me, Doctor? Remember where you are and who you're addressing. I'm simply making an observation based on data, Your Honor. That's what scientists do. The judge dismisses her with a wave, then addresses the court. Due to the late hour and Dr. Collins's clearly limited preparation, we'll adjourn until tomorrow. Perhaps overnight, the doctor can organize her thoughts more coherently. As the courtroom empties, Dr. Collins's phone vibrates in her pocket. She waits until she's alone to check the message. Financial records located. Judge Harrison and defense attorney Bedford share ownership in 3 investment properties. Call when ready for more. The pieces of a puzzle years in the making begin falling perfectly into place. The hotel room door clicks shut behind Dr. Collins. Only now, in private, does she allow her professional mask to slip. Her shoulders drop. Her jaw unclenches. She kicks off her shoes and stands motionless by the window, watching darkness settle over Baltimore. 5 minutes. She gives herself exactly 5 minutes to feel the anger and humiliation. The clock on her phone counts down as she processes the day's events. Harrison's sneering comments, the bailiff taking her teaching model, the jurors' pitying glances. When the timer beeps, she straightens her spine and transforms back into purpose and determination. She opens her laptop and arranges the case files in precise order. Then she retrieves a secure phone from a hidden compartment in her briefcase and dials a number not stored in any contact list. This is Amara Collins, she states clearly. Authorization code Sierra Delta 974. The response comes immediately. Authentication confirmed, Dr. Collins. We've been expecting your call. What did you find? Her voice shifts from the patient expert witness tone to something sharper, more commanding. The financial connections between Harrison and Bedford run deeper than expected, the voice reports. Beyond the 3 properties they co-own, we've identified a shell company that funnels consulting fees from the hospital's parent corporation to Harrison's wife's design firm. The transactions are structured to avoid detection in standard disclosure reviews. Dr. Collins takes notes in a precise shorthand. Timeline? The financial relationship began 8 years ago, shortly after Harrison was assigned to the medical malpractice division. Since then, Bedford has won 92% of his cases before Harrison significantly higher than his success rate with other judges. And the pattern I suspected? Confirmed. We analyzed transcripts from Harrison's last 50 medical malpractice trials. Female expert witnesses receive sustained objections at a rate 78% higher than their male counterparts. Their testimony is interrupted an average of 12 times per hour versus 3 times for men with identical credentials. His case reversal rate on appeal? 7 cases have been overturned in the past decade citing judicial misconduct with gender-biased undertones. All were quietly reassigned with minimal publicity. Dr. Collins nods, unsurprised but now armed with concrete data. Send everything to my secure server and initiate protocol transparency. Protocol transparency confirmed, the voice responds with new urgency. The Oversight Committee will be notified. Recording devices are being placed in the courtroom overnight. How would you like to proceed tomorrow? I'll continue as the expert witness they expect for now, she says, her tone calculating. Let them underestimate me a while longer. After ending the call, Dr. Collins reorganizes her presentation materials for tomorrow. She adds subtle references to case law regarding judicial misconduct that only someone with legal training would recognize. Breadcrumbs for those paying attention. She removes her Harvard pin and replaces it with a smaller, less noticeable one from the State Bar Association's Ethics Committee hidden in plain sight. From her suitcase, she retrieves a small leather portfolio. Inside lies an ID card for the Federal Judicial Conduct Review Board, where she serves as a special medical advisor. Next to it rests her appointment letter to the State Ethics Commission, signed by the governor 3 years ago. Dr. Collins runs her fingers over these credentials, proof of the path she's built beyond medicine. After facing bias throughout her early career, she hadn't just persevered as a neurologist. She'd strategically positioned herself at the intersection of medicine and judicial oversight, focusing specifically on bias in medical malpractice cases. She closes the portfolio and prepares for bed, reviewing tomorrow's strategy. The judge's behavior has already provided ample evidence, but she needs more to ensure a thorough investigation. Tomorrow, she'll give him enough rope to hang himself professionally. Her phone chimes with a new message as she drifts toward sleep. Additional connection found. Harrison ruled favorably in 3 previous cases involving Bedford's hospital client. All 3 verdicts were later questioned but never formally investigated. Tomorrow, Judge Harrison won't be evaluating her credibility. She'll be evaluating his. Morning light streams through the courthouse windows as Dr. Collins takes her seat. The courtroom buzzes with anticipation. Word of yesterday's tensions has spread. The plaintiff's attorney approaches, concern etched across her face. Dr. Collins, after yesterday, I wouldn't blame you for feeling intimidated. Judge Harrison clearly has some issue with you. Dr. Collins arranges her notes with steady hands. Trust me, I've handled worse. Weiss blinks, surprised by her confidence. Before she can respond, the bailiff calls the court to order. Judge Harrison enters, immediately fixing Dr. Collins with a cold stare. Today, his hostility radiates without pretense. Before we continue, Harrison begins, once seated, I want to remind everyone that this court demands respect and professionalism. His gaze locks onto Dr. Collins. Yesterday's proceedings were disappointing in that regard. Dr. Collins notices something she didn't yesterday. A small red light on a courtroom camera in the corner. Protocol transparency is active. Every word is now being recorded for the Oversight Committee. Dr. Collins, Judge Harrison continues, I remind you that you're still under oath. Yesterday's performance was lacking in both substance and respect for this court. I trust today will be different. Weiss rises immediately. Objection, Your Honor. That characterization of Dr. Collins's testimony is prejudicial and unfounded. Overruled, Harrison snaps. One more outburst like that, counselor, and you'll be held in contempt. Now proceed. The defense attorney resumes cross-examination with renewed aggression, clearly emboldened by the judge's obvious bias. Each question attempts to twist Dr. Collins's expertise into a liability. So, Dr. Collins, you spend most of your time in research rather than direct patient care, correct? No, that's incorrect. My practice is evenly divided between objection, Your Honor, Bedford interrupts. Non-responsive. Sustained, Judge Harrison rules instantly. Dr. Collins, answer the specific question asked. Dr. Collins adjusts her approach. Approximately 50% of my time involves direct patient care. So only half your time is spent actually treating patients, Bedford emphasizes, spinning her accurate answer. When Dr. Collins provides a detailed explanation about the standard of care violation, Judge Harrison interrupts. The jury will disregard that entire response. Dr. Collins, you've been warned about offering opinions beyond the scope of the question. Dr. Collins nods politely, fully aware of the recording. She deliberately cites a medical journal that she learned overnight contains contributions from Judge Harrison's brother-in-law. The Journal of Neurosurgical Standards, in which Dr. Lawrence Keller published his definitive work on spinal cord compression, clearly establishes that delays beyond 6 hours constitute negligence. Judge Harrison reacts visibly to the name. That journal is irrelevant to these proceedings. Your Honor, she responds with practiced innocence, that journal is considered the definitive source on this specific medical procedure. Is there a reason you find it particularly objectionable? The judge's face reddens. Another comment like that, doctor, and you'll be held in contempt. From the gallery, a man in a gray suit watches intently, taking notes on a small pad. He arrived early that morning, displaying credentials to the bailiff that granted him immediate access. His badge, temporarily tucked inside his jacket, identifies him as a representative from the Judicial Review Board. The trap closes a little tighter with each biased ruling Harrison makes. After the morning recess, the defense calls their expert witness. Dr. James Phillips strides to the stand with practiced confidence. Silver-haired and square-jawed, he embodies the stereotype of medical authority that Judge Harrison clearly respects. Dr. Phillips, Harrison says warmly, thank you for accommodating the court with your distinguished presence. We understand how valuable your time is. Dr. Collins watches the performance unfold with clinical detachment. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Where her credentials were questioned, Phillips's are praised. Where her answers were interrupted, his ramble unimpeded. In my 30 years at Metropolitan Hospital, Phillips explains at length, I've never seen a case where a 12-hour delay in this specific procedure resulted in the kind of damage claimed here. Judge Harrison nods appreciatively. Thank you for that clarity, Doctor. Dr. Phillips provides long-winded answers with minimal scientific backing, frequently using phrases like, in my experience, rather than citing medical literature. When he directly contradicts Dr. Collins's testimony about spinal cord compression standards, Judge Harrison allows it without question. Excellent explanation, Doctor, Harrison comments after a particularly vague response. Your practical experience illuminates this issue. During cross-examination, Weiss challenges Phillips's conclusions about the MRI results. Dr. Phillips, wouldn't you agree that the imaging shows compression at the C4 to C5 level that meets the criteria for emergency intervention? Objection, Bedford interjects. Asked and answered during direct examination. Sustained, Judge Harrison rules, despite Phillips never addressing this specific question. When Weiss attempts to reference Dr. Collins's earlier testimony about established medical protocols, the judge cuts her off immediately. We've already heard Dr. Collins's opinions, such as they were. Move on, counselor. Dr. Collins makes deliberate eye contact with Judge Harrison as she writes something in her notebook. For a moment, uncertainty flashes across his face, quickly masked by renewed hostility. At the plaintiff's table, Dr. Collins passes a note to Weiss. The attorney reads it, eyes widening slightly before composing herself. The note contains specific language from Judicial Conduct Code Section 3.5. A judge shall perform judicial duties without bias or prejudice, along with the case citation, Jensen v. State Judicial Commission. The defense shows a series of medical images, with Phillips offering interpretations that consistently favor the hospital. During a tense exchange about subtle features in the MRI, Judge Harrison makes his most blatant display of bias yet. The court recognizes Dr. Phillips's superior interpretation of these images, given his extensive clinical experience compared to academic theorizing. Dr. Collins raises her hand slightly. Your Honor, may I clarify something for the record? If you must, Doctor, but briefly. I'd like the record to show that I've personally performed over 500 of these specific procedures, while Dr. Phillips, according to his own CV, has performed 37. I believe accuracy matters in testimony. The courtroom falls silent. Phillips shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Judge Harrison pounds his gavel. The court doesn't need your commentary on another witness's qualifications. In the gallery, the Judicial Review Board observer makes detailed notes. He's been joined by 2 more observers, strategically positioned in different areas of the courtroom. All 3 respond to the escalation alert triggered by protocol transparency. Their presence remains unnoticed by Harrison, who focuses his growing frustration entirely on Dr. Collins. The judge doesn't realize he's performing for an audience far more important than the jury. The afternoon brings the final phase of testimony. Dr. Collins returns to the stand for redirect examination. The plaintiff's attorney, now following Dr. Collins's subtle cues, structures her questions to showcase both the doctor's expertise and the judge's bias. Dr. Collins, can you explain the established medical consensus on spinal compression treatment timelines? Before she can answer, Judge Harrison interjects. Counsel, we've covered this ground extensively. Your Honor, the defense expert directly contradicted Dr. Collins's testimony. She deserves the opportunity to address those contradictions. Harrison's jaw tightens. Proceed, but be concise. Dr. Collins provides a measured response, citing 3 peer-reviewed studies that establish the 6-hour intervention window as standard practice. With each precise statement, Harrison's patience visibly thins. Dr. Collins, your continued attempts to present yourself as the ultimate authority are trying this court's patience. Your Honor, I'm simply presenting medical facts. Facts according to you, he retorts. This court determines what constitutes a fact. The statement, a clear overreach of judicial authority, causes murmurs in the courtroom. One of the judicial observers types rapidly on a tablet, flagging the comment for immediate review. Bedford, the defense attorney, shifts uncomfortably. Even he recognizes Harrison's growing recklessness. During redirect examination, Bedford moderates his aggressive approach, asking more neutral questions. Harrison notices this shift and shoots Bedford a warning look. The attorney immediately hardens his tone, but the momentary hesitation has been noted by the observers. Dr. Collins, Bedford continues, isn't it possible that reasonable medical professionals might disagree about these imaging results? When the imaging shows clear compression with neurological symptoms, the standard of care is unequivocal, she responds. This is defined in the American Association of Neurological Surgeons Procedural Guidelines, Section 4.3.2, regarding cervical compression with progressive neurological deficit. Judge Harrison interrupts. Dr. Collins, please avoid unnecessarily technical jargon. Dr. Collins tilts her head slightly. Your Honor, would you prefer I use layman's terms or legally precise medical definitions as required by State Code 47.3 for expert testimony? The reference to the specific legal code 1 that Harrison should know but clearly doesn't causes him to flush with anger. Are you questioning my understanding of the law, Doctor? Not at all, Your Honor. I'm seeking clarification on your preference for my testimony. Harrison stands, looming over her from the bench. What I prefer is a witness who knows her place. The statement hangs in the air, damning in its naked bias. One of the judicial observers quietly exits the courtroom, phone in hand. In the gallery, the chief judicial observer makes a final notation and closes his portfolio. Dr. Collins maintains perfect composure, her gaze steady. And what place would that be, Your Honor? Bedford jumps to his feet. Objection! The witness is being argumentative. Sustained, Harrison barks. Dr. Collins, you are dangerously close to contempt. The plaintiff's attorney intervenes. Your Honor, may we approach the bench? Not necessary, Harrison snaps. This court will take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I expect a different attitude from all parties. As he rises to leave, the bailiff approaches him with a folded note. Harrison reads it, his expression shifting from annoyed to concerned as the color drains from his face. The wheels of justice have begun turning against the judge himself. The courtroom reconvenes after 30 minutes, twice the announced recess time. Whispers circulate among the spectators. Judge Harrison returns looking visibly shaken, his earlier arrogance replaced by a stiff formality. The plaintiff's attorney leans toward Dr. Collins. What's happening? Justice, she replies simply. Before proceedings continue, the bailiff approaches Harrison with another note. The judge reads it, his complexion paling further. He clears his throat. This court will recess for an additional 30 minutes. As he hurries from the courtroom, Dr. Collins notices a new presence. The district's chief judge has entered silently, taking a seat in the back row. His expression is grave as he observes the proceedings. Two more people in formal attire follow him, carrying official-looking portfolios stamped with the state seal. When Judge Harrison returns, he no longer walks with commanding authority, but moves like a man anticipating an impact. The chief judge joins him at the bench for a brief, intense conversation before taking an unprecedented seat in the gallery's front row. Harrison clears his throat. Before we continue, I feel I should clarify some of my earlier statements regarding Dr. Collins's testimony. This court has the utmost respect for all expert witnesses regardless of their background. The forced retraction comes too late. Dr. Collins rises from her seat. Your Honor, if I may address the court. Harrison hesitates, then nods, already sensing he's lost control of the situation. The chief judge watches intently, his presence an unmistakable sign that normal procedures have been suspended. Dr. Collins approaches the bench, but instead of stopping there, she turns to face the entire courtroom. From her briefcase, she removes a different set of credentials, not her medical license, but an official ID card with the state seal and federal judiciary emblem. My name is Dr. Amara Collins. While I am indeed a practicing neurologist and expert in medical malpractice cases, I also serve as the appointed special medical advisor to the Federal Judicial Conduct Review Board, focusing specifically on bias in medical testimony evaluation. A collective gasp ripples through the courtroom. Judge Harrison grips his gavel so tightly his knuckles turn white. Bedford, the defense attorney, starts gathering his papers as if preparing to flee. For the past 3 years, Dr. Collins continues with calm authority, I've been conducting an authorized review of judicial conduct in medical malpractice cases across this circuit. Judge Harrison's courtroom was scheduled for routine observation. She turns directly to Harrison. However, upon reviewing your case history before my appearance, I identified concerning patterns that warranted closer investigation. Your treatment of my testimony these past 2 days has, unfortunately, confirmed those patterns. The chief judge stands. As of this moment, these proceedings are temporarily suspended. Judge Terrence Harrison is recused from this case pending a full investigation into judicial misconduct. Harrison finds his voice, though it lacks its former power. This is outrageous. You deliberately misrepresented yourself. No, Your Honor, Dr. Collins interrupts calmly. My credentials as a medical expert are genuine and complete. I was not obligated to disclose my position with the review board during a formal investigation. In fact, doing so would have compromised the integrity of our findings. She addresses the stunned courtroom. When I whispered that authorization code yesterday, Sierra Delta 974, it activated protocol transparency, our highest level of judicial misconduct investigation. The observers who had been taking notes throughout the proceedings now reveal their credentials members of the Judicial Review Board, present to document Harrison's conduct firsthand. The defense attorney, Bedford, attempts to slip out of the courtroom, but is stopped by a federal marshal who has appeared at the door. Mr. Bedford, we'll need to speak with you as well regarding your undisclosed financial relationships with Judge Harrison. The plaintiff sits in shocked silence, witnessing justice unfold in an unexpected direction. Weiss, the plaintiff's attorney, struggles to maintain her professional composure despite her obvious satisfaction. Dr. Collins returns to her seat, opening her laptop to reveal dozens of similar cases flagged for investigation, many involving the same defense firm and hospital. The screen shows a detailed database tracking patterns of rulings across multiple judges, with Harrison's name highlighted in red. Every biased ruling, every dismissive comment had been another nail in Harrison's professional coffin. The news breaks like a summer storm, sudden, powerful, and transformative. By evening, reporters surround the courthouse, their vans creating a media perimeter as the story of judicial corruption spreads. Judge exposed by expert he humiliated runs across the bottom of local news broadcasts. National outlets pick up the story by midnight. Inside the Chief Judge's chambers, Dr. Collins presents her findings to a hastily assembled panel of judicial administrators. The evidence forms a damning constellation statistical analyses revealing Harrison's clear pattern of gender bias, financial records documenting undisclosed conflicts of interest, and courtroom recordings capturing his contemptuous treatment of female experts. We've been tracking Judge Harrison's rulings for 36 months, Dr. Collins explains, navigating through detailed spreadsheets on her laptop. The pattern emerged early but required substantial documentation to ensure accuracy. She displays a color-coded chart showing ruling disparities. Over the past 3 years, Judge Harrison ruled against female expert testimony at a rate 84% higher than male experts with identical credentials. In medical malpractice cases specifically, when the expert was a woman, he issued favorable rulings to this particular hospital in 92% of cases. A judicial administrator leans forward. And you're certain these statistics control for other variables? Absolutely, Dr. Collins confirms. We matched cases by type, severity, evidence quality, and attorney experience levels. The gender bias remained the only statistically significant factor. The chief judge reviews the financial documents with growing concern. These property investments with defense attorney Bedford completely undisclosed, and these connections to the hospital board through his wife's family business. Yes, Dr. Collins confirms. A clear violation of judicial ethics requiring recusal. We've identified 27 cases in the past 5 years where these specific conflicts should have been disclosed. In another room down the hall, the hospital's general counsel sits across from the plaintiff's attorney. The atmosphere has transformed dramatically. Where once the hospital had fought the malpractice claim aggressively, they now push settlement papers across the table with barely concealed desperation. Our client deserves fair compensation for their suffering, Weiss states, sliding the settlement offer back with a firm shake of her head. This figure doesn't approach adequate, especially in light of recent revelations. The hospital counsel sighs. What number would resolve this matter quickly and confidentially? Confidentiality is no longer an option, Weiss replies. Any settlement must include public acknowledgement of the hospital's failures and implementation of new safety protocols. Meanwhile, Bedford law firm erupts into internal chaos. Thomas Bedford faces an emergency meeting of the firm's partners, who demand explanations for the financial entanglements with Judge Harrison. 3 junior partners resign immediately, emailing their clients about their departure before Bedford can even begin damage control. This wasn't just unethical, it was stupid, one departing partner tells reporters gathered outside. He compromised everything we built for a guaranteed advantage in court. Forensic accountants descend on Bedford's financial records, tracing connections between the law firm, the judge, and the hospital's leadership. What they discover extends beyond simple property investments to a complex network of shell companies and consulting arrangements designed to hide influence. Dr. Collins meets with the original plaintiff, a former construction worker now partially paralyzed due to the hospital's negligence. For 3 years, their case has been delayed and dismissed across different courts, their life deteriorating while justice remained elusive. Your case became the catalyst, Dr. Collins explains gently. But you weren't the only one. We've identified 27 similar cases where justice was denied, potentially due to this same pattern of bias and financial conflicts. The plaintiff's eyes fill with tears. I just wanted them to admit they made a mistake. I never thought it would uncover all this. A class action lawsuit begins forming as other patients with similar experiences come forward. Their stories follow a pattern cases before Judge Harrison, female expert witnesses whose testimony was dismissed, favorable rulings for the hospital, despite compelling evidence of negligence. The hospital's stock price drops 15% in a single trading day as investors react to the potential liability. Their board calls an emergency session, voting to replace their general counsel and initiate an internal investigation into their relationship with Bedford law firm and Judge Harrison. Within the judicial system itself, a comprehensive review launches. Other judges with connections to Harrison find their past rulings scrutinized. 2 recuse themselves from current medical malpractice cases, sensing the changing tide and hoping to avoid deeper investigation. Bedford law firm issues a carefully worded press release. We are shocked by these allegations and have placed Mr. Bedford on indefinite leave pending investigation. Our firm remains committed to the highest ethical standards. Behind closed doors, however, the remaining partners scramble to distance themselves from Bedford's actions. An anonymous source within the firm reveals to reporters that Bedford had boasted about his special relationship with Judge Harrison, even coaching expert witnesses on how to play to Harrison's preferences. The Judicial Ethics Committee expands their investigation beyond Harrison to the entire medical malpractice division of the Circuit Court. They discover a troubling pattern of biased rulings favoring certain hospitals and insurance companies across multiple judges, suggesting a systemic problem rather than an isolated case. Medical associations across the state issue statements supporting Dr. Collins and calling for reforms in how expert testimony is evaluated in malpractice cases. Several prominent physicians come forward with their own stories of judicial bias, creating a watershed moment for reform. As investigators dig deeper into Harrison's case files, they discover evidence even more damning than initially suspected. Encrypted emails between the judge and a hospital board member discuss how to handle upcoming malpractice cases, with specific mention of ensuring the right experts are heard and the wrong ones discredited. This discovery elevates the misconduct from ethical violations to potential criminal conspiracy. The state attorney general announces a formal investigation into possible judicial corruption, with federal authorities monitoring the situation. Dr. Collins continues her dual roles throughout the unfolding drama, testifying in the resumed malpractice trial before a new judge while consulting with the Judicial Review Board on the expanding investigation. Her calm expertise in both medicine and legal ethics makes her the perfect bridge between these worlds. When asked by a reporter why she pursued this path beyond her medical career, she responds simply, "Justice and health are inseparable." What good is medical knowledge if the system prevents its fair application? Some infections require systemic treatment, not just local intervention. The investigators discover Harrison's handwritten notes about Dr. Collins from before the trial, another woman who needs to be put in her place. 6 weeks later, Judge Terrence Harrison sits on the other side of the bench, facing the Judicial Conduct Committee in a sterile government hearing room. His expensive suit hangs slightly loose on his frame. Stress has taken its physical toll. His once commanding presence has diminished, shoulders slumped, voice lacking its former authority. Beside him sits his attorney, Jacob Stern, a former judicial colleague now tasked with defending the indefensible. The committee members, 3 judges, 2 attorneys, and a public representative review documents with solemn expressions. The room fills with spectators, including several former litigants from Harrison's courtroom who have come to witness his judgment day. Dr. Collins takes the witness stand. She doesn't speak with anger or seek revenge. Her clinical precision makes the facts all the more damning. The statistical deviation in Judge Harrison's rulings cannot be attributed to chance or coincidence, she explains, displaying charts that track his decision patterns over 15 years. When controlling for all other variables, case type, evidence quality, attorney experience, gender bias emerges as the only significant factor in these disparities. She presents a color-coded timeline showing the progression of Harrison's biased rulings. The pattern intensified approximately 8 years ago, coinciding with the beginning of his financial relationship with the Bedford firm. Harrison shifts uncomfortably as his own rulings appear on the projection screen, categorized by gender of expert witnesses and outcome. The evidence is overwhelming. Stern attempts to undermine her methodology. Dr. Collins, isn't it possible your statistical approach contains inherent bias? After all, you came looking for a pattern. That's why we employed double-blind analysis, she responds calmly. 3 independent statisticians reviewed anonymized data without knowing what factors we were investigating. All 3 identified the same pattern. When Stern questions her qualifications to make such assessments, the committee chair intervenes. Dr. Collins holds degrees in both medicine and statistical analysis, and has published peer-reviewed research on decision-making bias in healthcare and legal settings. Her qualifications are not in question here. The financial evidence proves even more devastating. Bank records display transfers between Harrison's family trust and Bedford's offshore account following key verdicts. Property records reveal a pattern of asset transfers deliberately structured to avoid disclosure requirements. Judge Harrison accepted approximately $347,000 in indirect payments over 8 years, the forensic accountant testifies. The transactions were designed specifically to evade standard ethics disclosures. When Harrison finally speaks, his defense crumbles under questioning. He claims ignorance of financial disclosure requirements despite having instructed other judges on those very rules at judicial conferences. He denies bias, while unable to explain the statistical anomalies in his rulings. These academic analyses don't capture the nuances of courtroom dynamics, he insists, inadvertently echoing the dismissive language he used against Dr. Collins. Each case is unique. Statistical patterns can be misleading. Yet the pattern becomes remarkably consistent when the expert witness is female, notes a committee member. How do you explain that specific correlation? Harrison has no answer. The committee's deliberation is brief. Their recommendation comes swiftly: immediate removal from the bench, referral to the Bar Association for disbarment proceedings, and criminal investigation for judicial corruption. The evidence demonstrates a persistent pattern of gender-based bias and serious financial impropriety that undermines public confidence in the judiciary, the chair announces. This committee finds that Judge Harrison has violated Canons 1, 2, and 3 of the Code of Judicial Conduct and is unfit to continue serving. As Harrison leaves the hearing room, reporters swarm him with questions. The man who once commanded a courtroom with impunity now hurries to his car with a coat over his head, refusing to comment. His attorney offers only a terse statement about appealing the decision. That evening, news programs run side-by-side images. Judge Harrison towering over Dr. Collins in court weeks earlier, and today's footage of him shrinking from public view. Legal commentators discuss the broader implications for judicial accountability. This case reveals how power can corrupt the very system designed to ensure justice, one analyst explains. The question now is how many other judges might be operating with similar bias. At home, Harrison watches his reputation disintegrate in real time. Former colleagues issue statements distancing themselves from him. The governor announces a task force to review all his past decisions. Social media fills with stories from women who faced his courtroom bias over the years. His phone rings constantly reporters, former friends, his increasingly concerned attorney as the criminal investigation intensifies. When he finally answers, it's his attorney with more bad news. Terry, federal agents just executed search warrants at Bedford's offices and the hospital. They're seizing computers and files related to what they're calling a years-long conspiracy to manipulate judicial outcomes. This is moving beyond ethics violations into criminal territory. Harrison stares at the judicial ethics code framed on his wall, the same rules he'd spent a career manipulating and violating. 3 months after Judge Harrison's removal, the ripple effects continue to transform the judicial landscape. Dr. Collins stands at the podium in the grand ballroom of the State Judicial Conference Center, addressing hundreds of judges who sit in attentive silence. The same people who might have dismissed her expertise months ago now lean forward, captivated by her presentation. The Harrison case wasn't about one judge's misconduct, she explains, her voice carrying through the hushed room. It revealed systemic vulnerabilities that allowed bias to flourish unchecked for years. Behind her slides display the comprehensive reforms already implemented across the state court system. The conference has devoted its entire agenda to examining bias in expert witness evaluation and implementing new safeguards against judicial misconduct. A technology team demonstrates new monitoring software that will track judicial rulings for statistical anomalies that might indicate unconscious bias, a direct result of Dr. Collins's methodology. The system flags patterns of decisions that correlate with gender, race, or other protected characteristics of expert witnesses. This isn't about policing thought, Dr. Collins clarifies. It's about creating awareness of potential blind spots we all carry. The data serves as a mirror, not a judgment. Across the state, courts implement mandatory bias training, with particular focus on gender disparities in expert witness credibility assessment. Judicial performance reviews now include bias metrics, with regular external audits by qualified statisticians who look for patterns similar to those found in Harrison's courtroom. The Chief Justice rises to announce additional reforms. Starting next month, all financial disclosure requirements will be significantly expanded. Judges must now report not just direct investments, but also family connections to industries frequently appearing before their courts. The State Bar Association simultaneously implements stricter disclosure requirements for attorneys, with severe penalties for concealing financial relationships. Several judges voluntarily recuse themselves from cases where even the appearance of conflict exists, a cultural shift in judicial ethics prompted by Harrison's public downfall. At Metropolitan Hospital, the board of directors has been restructured, with patient advocates now holding key positions. Their first action was establishing a transparent medical review process for alleged malpractice, often resolving valid claims before they reach litigation. We're focusing on healing relationships with patients, not just defending against lawsuits, the new board chair explains at a press conference. When we make mistakes, we acknowledge them and make proper restitution. Bedford law firm has dissolved entirely, its remaining partners scrambling to dissociate themselves from the scandal. 3 former clients have filed malpractice suits against the firm, claiming they were never informed of the conflicts of interest that may have prejudiced their cases. The most significant change comes from the state Supreme Court, which issues new rules allowing for greater scrutiny of judicial conduct during trials. Attorneys can now request independent review of patterns of rulings without facing contempt charges, a direct response to how Harrison had silenced challenges to his bias. We cannot have a justice system where questioning a judge's impartiality becomes punishable, the Chief Justice explains. Proper respect for the bench doesn't require blind deference to potential misconduct. Dr. Collins works with a team of data scientists to refine the algorithms that first identified Harrison's pattern of misconduct. The project, now funded by a judicial integrity grant, aims to create an early warning system for courts across the country. 3 neighboring states have already requested access to the technology. As she concludes her presentation, Dr. Collins displays a simple slide showing improved outcomes in medical malpractice cases, not measured by who wins, but by consistency of evidentiary standards regardless of expert gender. "This is what progress looks like," she tells the assembled judges. "Not perfect, but measurably better." As the reforms take shape across the judicial system, a package arrives at Dr. Collins's office. Inside is a judicial complaints report from a neighboring state, with a note. "We've identified a similar pattern here. Can you help?" The battle against bias had only just begun, with Dr. Collins now recognized as its most formidable warrior. 1 year later, Dr. Collins stands at a podium accepting the American Bar Association's special citation for contributions to judicial integrity. The audience, a mix of legal professionals, medical experts, and judicial reform advocates, gives her a standing ovation that continues until she gently raises her hands. What happened in Judge Harrison's courtroom wasn't just about gender bias or financial corruption, she begins. It was about the fragility of justice when power goes unchecked. Warm lighting illuminates the diverse faces in the crowd. The camera pans across several familiar figures from the original courthouse drama, the plaintiff, who finally received proper compensation after a new trial, the chief judge who supported the investigation when presented with evidence, even one of the junior partners from Bedford's firm who became a whistleblower after the initial revelations. "Systems depend on people willing to hold them accountable," Dr. Collins continues. "A year ago, I stood in a courtroom being deliberately humiliated because I represented a threat to a corrupt status quo. Today, I stand before you because that same system has the capacity to heal itself when enough people demand better." Dr. Collins continues her work as both a neurologist and judicial system advisor, but now she does so openly. Her dual expertise has made her a sought-after speaker at legal and medical conferences, where she shares her methodology for identifying patterns of bias. 3 universities have created fellowship programs based on her interdisciplinary approach. Former Judge Harrison's legacy serves as a cautionary tale in ethics classes at law schools nationwide. His case study appears in judicial training materials, stripped of any remaining prestige. After pleading guilty to reduced charges of corruption, he serves community service at the same hospital he once protected, assisting patients who struggle with the medical system. "Accountability doesn't always mean punishment," Dr. Collins explains when asked about Harrison's sentence. "Sometimes it means redirecting someone's energy toward healing the very systems they damaged." The original plaintiff from the malpractice case has used part of their settlement to establish a patient advocacy foundation, with Dr. Collins serving on its advisory board. Together, they help vulnerable patients navigate complex medical and legal systems, ensuring their voices are heard. "The greatest injustice was that it took 3 years for this patient to receive proper compensation," Dr. Collins notes during a foundation meeting. "Our goal is to make sure no one else waits that long for justice." The courtroom where it all began has been reformed as well. The new judge appointed to replace Harrison, a woman with both legal and medical credentials, has established a reputation for fair treatment of all expert witnesses, evaluating testimony on merit rather than gender or status. Dr. Collins occasionally returns to that courtroom as an expert witness, always with a moment of reflection as she takes the stand. The experience has neither hardened nor embittered her. Instead, it has reinforced her belief in systems of accountability and the power of speaking truth, even when your voice shakes. Her office at the University Medical Center has expanded to include a small team dedicated to monitoring judicial bias in medical cases nationwide. On her desk sits a small plaque with words that have become her personal motto and the title of her upcoming book on judicial reform, "Justice Sees Through Bias." The case that began with humiliation has transformed into a movement for accountability that continues to spread across the legal and medical professions. Dr. Collins doesn't consider herself an activist, just a professional, unwilling to accept that some voices deserve less respect than others. In medicine, we're taught to treat the underlying condition, not just the symptoms, she explains to a student who asks about her approach. Bias isn't just a personal failing, it's a systemic disease that requires systemic treatment. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, hit that like button right now. Your support helps Beat Stories bring more powerful tales of accountability to light. These aren't just stories, they're reminders that speaking truth to power changes lives. Subscribe to Beat Stories for a new compelling drama every week. Stories of ordinary people with extraordinary courage who expose corruption and transform broken systems.
This story shouldn't be the exception. It should be the last time it ever happens. At Beat Stories, we turn one moment of injustice into a call for change. Subscribe to help make that call louder and longer lasting.